Right, turning now to Israel's war on Hamas. Israel says its army carried out a large ground incursion in the Gaza Strip overnight to attack Hamas positions. The military described it as its biggest incursion into Gaza yet. The United Nations humanitarian coordinator for the Palestinian territories has warned that nowhere in Gaza is safe as Israel steps up its preparations for an expected ground invasion.
Israeli tanks enter northern Gaza, setting the stage for Israel's next phase of combat. A full ground war has not started yet, but airstrikes are hitting the Gaza Strip non-stop. They've already reduced entire neighborhoods to rubble.
Because of the bombing, destruction, and killing, I came to seek shelter inside this camp with 9 members of my family in 2 cars. I had to sleep out in the open in the heat for 10 days to get a tent.
Israel says it is striking targets of the Islamist militant group Hamas, considered a terrorist organization by many Western governments. According to the UN, about 1.4 million Gazans are now displaced. The organization now says nowhere is safe in the entire Gaza Strip. Residents there who have no way out of the Strip are calling for an end to the hostilities.
We don't want war. We want it to stop. We're so tired. We're overwhelmed. We stand in long queues just to use the toilets. We don't even have basic rights. We are more like lifeless bodies.
A complete siege imposed by Israel after the Hamas terror attack has caused a critical shortage of supplies, and airstrikes are impeding aid deliveries.
We've been asked if we've been able to deliver to the Turkish hospital, which is perhaps the biggest provider of cancer services in Gaza. The answer is no. The answer is no, because we do not have security guarantees to deliver that aid.
International diplomacy efforts for a ceasefire have so far failed. A ground war to topple Hamas now may worsen an already dire situation in Gaza.
Well, earlier I talked to DW correspondent Tania Krämer in Jerusalem. She told me more about the Israeli incursion into Gaza overnight.
Well, the Israeli military confirmed only that what they described as a targeted raid into Gaza. They also released this video where you can see tanks and the infantry basically moving in. They say they targeted Hamas infrastructure there, also Hamas militants. And the army radio described it as the largest incursion yet as to date. So they also said that this is done in preparation for the next stages of combat, possibly referring to a even larger ground incursion that everybody in Israel at least is waiting for. All of this happens, of course, with also massive air bombardment, Israeli air bombardment on the Gaza Strip in the north and south. And we heard again also that Palestinians still in the north of Gaza, where also is the Gaza city, were called on leaving. And that prompted also a statement by the UN's humanitarian coordinator, Liz Hastings, saying that Palestinians there face an impossible situation because some had opted to stay. They don't have the means or they don't want to leave. So it's a very, very difficult situation for the civilian population there.
Tania, we heard Israel's Prime Minister there explaining that preparations are still underway for a ground operation, as they have been for days. Did he shed any new light as to what we can expect of that operation?
Well, I think he needed to address the Israeli public. There are a lot of questions being asked where this is going in Israel. People are looking what's happening in Gaza, obviously, but also what is happening in north on the northern border with Hezbollah as well. And he didn't say much new. He said that the ground offensive will happen soon, but he didn't give any details. He also said that a priority is still also to get the hostages, the Israeli hostages and other foreign nationals that are being held in Gaza, now at a number of 224. Only 4 were released so far that are being held in Gaza, to get them out. He also briefly touched on saying that basically talking about the responsibility. This is one of the big questions that's being discussed as well in Israel for what happened on October 7 when Hamas breached the border and went into southern Israel. He said everyone will have to ask and answer those questions, but this will be done after the war.
Tania, briefly, you mentioned the growing tensions in the north at the border with Lebanon. How is Israel handling the prospect of fighting on two fronts at the same time?
I mean, there is a lot of concern that the second front will be opening, and we've seen over the past 2.5 weeks tensions rising there, a lot of cross-border fighting, and we also see that the Israeli government has asked, most of the villages and towns close to the Lebanese border to evacuate and to go further to the center of the country. So there is concern that the second front will be opening. There could be miscalculation. Military analysts here are saying there could be a preemptive strike by Israel, or Hezbollah might join the war, as they put it, once this ground invasion might go ahead.
Tania Krämer in Jerusalem, thank you.
Let's bring in Hiba Tibi here. She's country director for the humanitarian organization Krämer, responsible for the West Bank and Gaza. She joins us from Ramallah in the West Bank. Welcome to the program. Hiba, let's start with the situation in Gaza. You're in daily contact with your colleagues there. What are they telling you?
I was just before the interview with my colleague on phone, and they were explaining to me that the situation is becoming more and more harder. Only today they had to go for bread queues that are now taking 6 hours in average to find a loaf of bread, or limited amount. It's like limited amount per family. And they are, for instance, my colleague had to leave at 4 a.m. just to reserve a spot in the queue. This is not the only issue that they are facing. The water. In the beginning, the first days of the war, they were able to secure water from the municipality pumped, not clean water, the salty one, for hygiene purposes. And it used to come for 3 hours every 3-4 days. Now it is not coming anymore. And I'm pretty sure that you already heard about the drinking water that is not available in Gaza anymore, because it requires fuel that replaces electricity for pumping and treating the water to become more drinkable.
Now, Israel has told Palestinians in the Gaza Strip to leave the north and move to the south, but the UN says that some Palestinians who did that, who fled their homes in the north, are now going back there because they can't find safe shelter, even in the south, which is supposed to be a safe zone. Are your colleagues in a similar situation?
Unfortunately, it's a reality and a fact. It's a testimony from my colleagues, not one, not two, the 5 of them who are who evacuated to the south. They left their houses. There are no houses to go back to, by the way. 3 of them, their houses are completely destroyed. 2 of them, they don't know if it's safe to go back to their homes, but they are unable to stay in the south. They are staying in apartments designed for 10 people, but they are sharing it with 80 people. They cannot sleep, they cannot access water, and it's under constant shelling. And by the way, those who stayed in the north, most of them who did not evacuate because of the fact that they cannot afford going to the south. The liter of fuel became extremely expensive. So for a family, an average family, to transport from the north, I'm talking 10 days ago, because every day, by the hour, the price of fuel gets higher. So in the beginning, it would cost the family around 1,000 shekels, which is around $350, and they cannot afford it.
All right. Now, you've issued a statement saying that what's happening in Gaza now is beyond what your team had envisioned as a worst-case scenario, but things could get even worse, couldn't they?
Yes, unfortunately, if the UN, as they announced, are going to stop providing services. If the hospitals are going to stop their services, honestly, I don't know what will be the situation. Already we see doctors, we have some contacts with partners with doctors who are providing medical services. They are doing surgeries using vinegar instead of the minimum anesthesia requirements. They are treating people on the floor outside the hospitals. They are very tired, but still they are trying to find a way. Medical supply, electricity, access to water. The contagious diseases now are breaking in a very scary way in the overcrowded shelters in the UN and even beyond. All of the information that we get, unfortunately, comes only from the shelters that are run by the UN. We don't even count what is happening in the surrounding areas with the crowded apartments, similar to what my colleagues are facing. So this is going to be an unimaginable. I can't even find words to describe what will happen if the situation continues to be like this, with no humanitarian supply, fuel or water restructured in Gaza, and most importantly, if the ground invasion occurs in amid of all of what we are seeing already now.
What is your team doing to prepare for that scenario about a possible ground invasion? Because everything is pointing towards that ground operation, as the Israeli government is calling it. What are you doing to prepare for that?
I will be very frank with you. CARE has been providing the humanitarian services for war victims since 1945, since the Second World War. However, now in 2023, we are unable to fulfill our mandate. Over the last days, we were able to focus our intervention from within Gaza. You know that, and also from Egypt, but all our supplies are on the border. Now, what we try to do is to secure what we have from on the ground. The worst case scenario that we built our intervention around is nothing compared to what we are seeing now. No one, I'm confirming, no one is prepared to intervene if a land invasion occurs. What we are seeing now is already massive. We are learning from what we have implemented as CARE International in mass destruction, like what happened in the earthquake in Turkey. But all what we are trying to find is not even working or suitable if a ceasefire is not attained now, if safe environment is provided for the humanitarian organizations to fulfill their mandate, saving lives. Now we are talking about survival moment. It's not rehabilitation or restructuring, only to help in people's survival mode.
Hiba, thank you very much for taking time to talk with us today. That was Hiba Tibi with the humanitarian organization CARE, speaking to us from Ramallah in the West Bank. Well, let's get the latest from Gaza. Journalist Hazem Belousha is there and joins us now on the line. Hazem, we understand that fuel is about to run out in Gaza, and without it, there will be no electricity. What impact is that likely to have?
Fuel is not only for electricity, it's for everything, for water supplies, for desalination stations, for drinking water, for hospitals, for grocery shops that have some supplies that remain there, for hygiene, for cleaning, and for collecting the trash from the streets. I can see the piles of trash in the streets. Because the UNRWA and municipalities have no fuel for their trucks to collect these trashes. So all aspects of life affected by the shortage of fuel, not only the electricity.
Israel says that Hamas has hoarded fuel supplies and that's where Gazans should get their fuel from. Do people in Gaza see it that way?
Well, in Gaza, they don't care about what's happening on the military level or in the political level. They care about their daily life. The fuel is shortage affecting their daily life. There are lines of people are waiting to fill a gallon to carry some water to their places, as there is no pumping of the water to the tanks up in the rooftops. They go for long distance to get some drinking water from some places that they still provide these water. They are looking at, yes.
Sorry, I was just, Hazem, could you walk us quickly through some of the things that you've witnessed there in Gaza during the last 24 hours?
Well, most noticeable thing that from early morning hours, I could hear the artillery shells non-stop east of Gaza Strip, particularly in Borage refugee camp in the center of Gaza. There were some reports that there was some tanks into the area, and there were some reports of Hamas fighters fired some rockets at Israeli jets, particularly, according to the statement, Israeli helicopter. And I see now, I'm close to the street to get some signal in my phone. I see people go and to line at the bakeries, and some of them, they carry empty gallons to fill it with the water.
Hazem, thank you very much for that update. That was journalist Hazem Belousha in Gaza.